Ecce Homo. I am a disciple of the philosopher Dionysus. I prefer to be even a satyr rather than a saint. To overthrow idols, my word for ideals. That rather is my business. Reality has been deprived of its value, its meaning, its veracity, to the same degree as an ideal world has been fabricated. How much truth can a spirit bear? How much truth can a spirit dare? That became for me more and more the real measure of value. Error, belief in the ideal, is not blindness. Error is cowardice. To look from a morbid perspective towards healthier concepts and values, and again conversely to look down from the abundance and certainty of rich life into the secret labor of the instinct, of decadence, that is what I have practiced most. It has been my own particular field of experience. In this, if in anything, I am a master. I now have the skill and knowledge to invert perspectives. First reason why a revaluation of values is perhaps possible at all to me alone. It was in the years of my lowest vitality that I ceased to be a pessimist. The instinct for self-recovery forbade to me a philosophy of indigence and discouragement. And in what does one really recognize that someone has turned out well? In that a human being who has turned out well does our senses good, that he is carved out of wood at once hard, delicate, and sweet-smelling. He has a taste only for what is beneficial to him. His pleasure, his joy ceases, where the measure of what is beneficial is overstepped. He divines cures for injuries. He employs ill chances to his own advantage. What does not kill him makes him stronger. Out of everything he sees, hears, experiences, he instinctively collects together his sum. He is a principle of selection. He rejects much. He is always in his company, whether he traffics with books, people, or landscapes. He does honor when he chooses, when he admits, when he trusts. He reacts slowly to every kind of stimulus, with that slowness which a protracted caution and a willed pride have bred in him. He tests an approaching stimulus. He is far from going out to meet it. He believes in neither misfortune nor in guilt. He knows how to forget. He is strong enough for everything to turn out for the best for him. Very well, I am the opposite of a decadent, for I have just described myself. This twofold succession of experiences, this accessibility to me of apparently separate worlds, is repeated in my nature in every respect. I am a doppelganger. I have a second face in addition to the first one, and perhaps also a third. Above all, that it requires no intention on my part, but only a mere waiting for me to enter involuntarily into a world of exalted and delicate things. I am at home there. My innermost passion becomes free only there. That I paid for this privilege almost with my life is certainly no unfair trade. To understand anything at all of my Zarathustra, one has perhaps to possess a qualification similar to that which I possess, to have one foot beyond life. I tame every bear. I even make buffoons mind their manners. During the 7 years in which I taught Greek to the top form of the Basel Grammar School, I never once had occasion to mete out a punishment. The laziest were industrious when they were with me. I am always up to dealing with any chance event. I have to be unprepared if I am to be the master of myself. My experiences give me a right to a general mistrust of the so-called selfless drives, of the whole love of one's neighbor, which is always ready with deeds and advice. It counts with me as weakness, as a special case of the incapacity to withstand stimuli. It is only among decadents that pity is called a virtue. My reproach against those who practice pity is that shame, reverence, a delicate feeling for distance easily eludes them. That pity instantly smells of mob and is so like bad manners as to be mistaken for them, that the hands of pity can under certain circumstances intrude downright destructively into a great destiny, into a solitariness where wounds are nursed, into a privilege for great guilt. I count the overcoming of pity among the noble virtues. I have, as Zarathustra's temptation, invented a case in which a great cry of distress reaches him, in which pity, like an ultimate sin, seeks to attack him, to seduce him from allegiance to himself, to remain master here to keep the elevation of one's task clean of the many lower and more short-sighted drives which are active in so-called selfless actions. That is the test, the final test perhaps which, as Zarathustra has to pass, the actual proof of his strength. Like anyone who has never lived among his equals, and to whom the concept requital is as inaccessible as is, for instance, the concept equal rights, I forbid myself in cases where a little or very great act of folly has been perpetrated against me, any countermeasure, any protective measure, also as is reasonable, any defense, any justification. My kind of requital consists in sending after the piece of stupidity, as quickly as possible, a piece of sagacity. In that way one may perhaps overtake it. To speak in a metaphor, I dispatch a pot of jam to get rid of a sour affair. Let anyone harm me in any way, I requite it. You may be sure of that, as soon as I can find an opportunity of expressing my thanks to the offender, occasionally even for the offense, or of asking him for something which can be more courteous than giving something. It also seems to me that the rudest word, the rudest letter, are more good-natured, more honest than silence. Those who keep silent almost always lack subtlety and politeness of the heart. Silence is an objection. Swallowing down necessarily produces a bad character. It even ruins the stomach. All those given to silence are dyspeptic. One will see that I would not like to see rudeness undervalued. It is the most humane form of contradiction by far, and, in the midst of modern tender-mindedness, one of our foremost virtues. Ressentiment is the forbidden in itself for the invalid, his evil, unfortunately, also his most natural inclination. This was grasped by that profound physiologist Buddha. His religion, which one would do better to call a system of hygiene so as not to mix it up with such pitiable things as Christianity, makes its effect dependent on victory over ressentiment, to free the soul of that first step of recovery. Not by enmity is enmity ended, by friendship is enmity ended. This stands at the beginning of Buddha's teaching. It is not morality that speaks thus, it is physiology that speaks thus. Ressentiment, born of weakness to no one more harmful than to the weak man himself in the opposite case, where a rich nature is the presupposition, a superfluous feeling to stay master, of which is almost the proof of richness. He who knows the seriousness with which my philosophy has taken up the struggle against the feelings of revengefulness and vindictiveness, even into the theory of free will. My struggle against Christianity is only a special instance of it. Will understand why it is precisely here that I throw the light on my personal bearing, my sureness of instinct and practice. To accept oneself as a fate, not to desire oneself different in such conditions, this is great rationality itself. War is another thing. I am by nature warlike. To attack is among my instincts. To be able to be an enemy, that perhaps presupposes a strong nature. It is in any event a condition of every strong nature. It needs resistances. Consequently, it seeks resistances. The aggressive pathos belongs as necessarily to strength as the feeling of revengefulness and vindictiveness does to weakness. A philosopher who is warlike also challenges problems to a duel. The undertaking is to master not any resistances that happen to present themselves, but those against which one has to bring all one's strength, suppleness, and mastery of weapons, to master equal opponents. Equality in face of the enemy, first presupposition of an honest duel. Where one despises, one cannot wage war. Where one commands, where one sees something as beneath one has not to wage war. My practice in warfare can be reduced to 4 propositions. Firstly, I attack only causes that are victorious. Under certain circumstances, I wait until they are victorious. Secondly, I attack only causes against which I would find no allies, where I stand alone, where I compromise only myself. I have never taken a step in public which was not compromising. That is my criterion of right action. Thirdly, I never attack persons. I only employ the person as a strong magnifying glass with which one can make visible a general but furtive state of distress which is hard to get a hold of. Fourthly, I attack only things where any kind of personal difference is excluded, where there is no background of bad experience. On the contrary, to attack is with me a proof of goodwill, under certain circumstances of gratitude. I possess a perfectly uncanny sensitivity of the instinct for cleanliness, so that I perceive physiologically, smell, the proximity or, the innermost parts, the entrails of every soul. I have in this sensitivity psychological antennae, with which I touch and take hold of every secret, all the concealed dirt at the bottom of many a nature, perhaps conditioned by bad blood, but whitewashed by education, is known to me almost on first contact. I perish under unclean conditions. My humanity is a continual self-overcoming. But I have need of solitude, that is to say recovery, return to myself, the breath of a free light, playful air. My entire Zarathustra is a dithyramb on solitude, or, if I have been understood, on cleanliness. Fortunately, not on pure folly. He who has eyes for colors will call it diamond. Disgust at mankind, at the rabble, has always been my greatest danger. Do you want to hear the words in which Zarathustra speaks of redemption from disgust? Yet what happened to me? How did I free myself from disgust? Who rejuvenated my eyes? How did I fly to the height where the rabble no longer sit at the well? Did my disgust itself create wings and water-diving powers for me? Truly I had to fly to the extremest height, to find again the fountain of delight. Oh, I have found it, my brothers, here in the extremest height. The fountain of delight gushes up for me, and here there is a life at which no rabble drinks with me. You gush up almost too impetuously, fountain of delight, and in wanting to fill the cup you often empty it again, and I still have to learn to approach you more discreetly. My heart still flows toward you all too impetuously, my heart upon which my summer burns, a short, hot melancholy over joyful summer. How my summer heart longs for your coolness. Gone is the lingering affliction of my spring, gone the snowflakes of my malice in June. Summer have I become entirely, and summer noonday, a summer at the extremest height, with cold fountains and blissful stillness. Oh, come, my friends, that the stillness may become more blissful yet, for this is our height and our home. We live too nobly and boldly here for all unclean men and their thirsts. Only cast your pure eyes into the well of my delight. Friends, you will not dim its sparkle. It shall laugh back at you with its purity. We build our nest in the tree future. Eagles shall bring food to us solitaries in their beaks. Truly food in which no unclean men could join us. They would think they were eating fire and burn their mouths. Truly we do not prepare a home here for unclean men. Their bodies and their spirits would call our happiness a cave of ice. So let us live above them like strong winds, neighbors of the eagles, neighbors of the snow, neighbors of the sun. That is how strong winds live. And like a wind will I one day blow among them, and with my spirit take away the breath of their spirit. Thus my future will have it. Truly Zarathustra is a strong wind to all flat lands. And he offers this advice to his enemies, and to all that spews and spits. Take care not to spit against the wind. Selectivity in nutriment, selectivity in climate and place. The third thing in which one may at no cost commit a blunder is selectivity in one's kind of recreation. Here too the degree to which a spirit is sui generis makes ever narrower the bounds of what is permitted, that is to say, useful to him. Another form of sagacity and self-defense consists in reacting as seldom as possible, and withdrawing from situations and relationships in which one would be condemned as it were to suspend one's freedom, one's initiative, and become a mere reagent. I take as parable traffic with books. The scholar who really does nothing but trundle books. The philologist, at a modest assessment about 200 a day, finally loses altogether the ability to think for himself. If he does not trundle, he does not think. He replies to a stimulus, a thought he has read when he thinks. Finally, he does nothing but react. The scholar expends his entire strength in affirmation and denial, in criticizing what has already been thought. He himself no longer thinks. The instinct for self-defense has in his case become soft. Otherwise he would defend himself against books. The scholar, a decadent, for the task of a revaluation of values, More capacities, perhaps, were required than have dwelt together in one individual. Above all, antithetical capacities, which, however, are not allowed to disturb or destroy one another. Order of rank among capacities, distance, the art of dividing without making inimical, mixing up nothing, reconciling nothing, a tremendous multiplicity which is nonetheless the opposite of chaos. This has been the precondition, the protracted, secret labor and artistic working of my instinct. The magnitude of its higher protection was shown in the fact I have at no time had the remotest idea what was growing within me, that all my abilities one day leapt forth, suddenly ripe in their final perfection. I cannot remember ever having taken any trouble. No trace of struggle can be discovered in my life. I am the opposite of a heroic nature. To want something, to strive after something, to have a goal, a wish. In my view, I know none of this from experience. Even at this moment I look out upon my future, a distant future, as upon a smooth sea. It is ruffled by no desire. I do not want in the slightest that anything should become other than it is. I do not want myself to become other than I am. But that is how I have always lived. I have harbored no desire. Life has been easy for me, easiest when it demanded of me the most difficult things. I know of no other way of dealing with great tasks than that of play. This is, as a sign of greatness, an essential precondition. The slightest constraint, the gloomy mien, any kind of harsh note in the throat are all objections to a man. How much more to his work? One must have no nerves. To suffer from solitude is likewise an objection. I have always suffered only from the multitude. Still today I treat everyone with the same geniality. I am even full of consideration for the basest people. In all this there is not a grain of arrogance, of secret contempt. He whom I despise divines that I despise him. Through my mere existence I enrage everything that has bad blood in its veins. My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be other than it is, not in the future, not in the past, not in all eternity, not merely to endure that which happens of necessity, still less to dissemble it. All idealism is untruthfulness in the face of necessity, but to love it. Ultimately, no one can extract from things, books included, more than he already knows. What one has no access to through experience, one has no ear for. Has anyone at the end of the 19th century a distinct conception of what poets of strong ages called inspiration? If not, I will describe it. If one had the slightest residue of superstition left in one would hardly be able to set aside the idea that one is merely incarnation, merely mouthpiece, merely medium of overwhelming forces. The concept of revelation in the sense that something suddenly, with unspeakable certainty and subtlety, becomes visible, audible, something that shakes and overturns one to the depths, simply describes the fact. One hears, one does not speak. One takes, one does not ask who gives. A thought flashes up like lightning, with necessity unfalteringly formed. I have never had any choice. An ecstasy whose tremendous tension sometimes discharges itself in a flood of tears, while one's steps now involuntarily rush along, now involuntarily lag. A complete being outside of oneself with the distinct consciousness of a multitude of subtle shudders and trickles down to one's toes, a depth of happiness in which the most painful and gloomy things appear, not as an antithesis, but as conditioned, demanded as a necessary color, within such a superfluity of light, an instinct for rhythmical relationships which spans forms of wide extent, length. The need for a wide-spanned rhythm is almost the measure of the force of inspiration, a kind of compensation for its pressure and tension. Everything is in the highest degree involuntary, but takes place as in a tempest of feeling, of freedom, of absoluteness, of power, of divinity. The involuntary nature of image, of metaphor, is the most remarkable thing of all. One no longer has any idea what is image, what metaphor. Everything presents itself as the readiest, the truest, the simplest means of expression. It really does seem to allude to a saying of Zarathustra's, as if the things themselves approached and offered themselves as metaphors. Here all things come caressingly to your discourse and flatter you, for they want to ride upon your back. Upon every image here you ride, to every truth. Here the words in the word chests of all existence spring open to you. All existence here wants to become words. All becoming here wants to learn speech from you. This is my experience of inspiration. I do not doubt that one has to go back thousands of years to find anyone who could say to me, "It is mine also." The body is inspired. Let us leave the soul out of it. It is in precisely this compass of space, in this access to opposites, that Zarathustra feels himself to be the highest species of all existing things. And when one hears how he defines this one, will refrain from seeking what is like him. The soul which possesses the longest ladder and can descend the deepest. The most spacious soul, which can run and stray and roam the farthest into itself. The most necessary soul, which out of joy hurls itself into chance. The existing soul which plunges into becoming. The possessing soul which wants to partake in desire and longing. The soul fleeing from itself which retrieves itself in the widest sphere, the wisest soul to which foolishness speaks sweetest, the soul that loves itself the most, in which all things have their current and countercurrent, and ebb and flow. But that is the concept of Dionysus himself. Hear how Zarathustra speaks with himself before sunrise. It is night. Now do all leaping fountains speak louder, and my soul too is a leaping fountain. It is night. Only now do all songs of lovers awaken, and my soul too is the song of a lover. Something unquenched, unquenchable is in me, that wants to speak out. A craving for love is within me, that speaks the language of love. Light am I, that I were night. But this is my solitude, that I am girded round with light. That I were dark and obscure. How I would suck at the breasts of light. And I should bless you, you little sparkling stars and glow-worms above, and be happy in your gifts of light. But I live in my own light. I drink back into myself the flames that break from me. I do not know the joy of the receiver, and I have often dreamed that stealing must be more blessed than receiving. It is my poverty that my hand never rests from giving. It is my envy that I see expectant eyes, and illumined nights of desire. O wretchedness of all givers! O eclipse of my sun! O craving for desire! O ravenous hunger and satiety! They take from me, but do I yet touch their souls? A gulf stands between giving and receiving, and the smallest gulf must be bridged at last. A hunger grows from out of my beauty. I should like to rob those to whom I give, thus do I hunger after wickedness, withdrawing my hand when another hand already reaches out to it, hesitating, like the waterfall that hesitates, even in its plunge, thus do I hunger after wickedness. Such vengeance does my abundance concoct, such spite wells from my solitude. My joy in giving died in giving. My virtue grew weary of itself through its abundance. The danger for him who always gives is that he may lose his shame. The hand and heart of him who distributes grow callous through sheer distributing. My eye no longer overflows with the shame of suppliance. My hand has become too hard for the trembling of hands that have been filled. Where have the tears of my eye and the bloom of my heart gone? O solitude of all givers! O silence of all light givers! Many suns circle in empty space. To all that is dark they speak with their light. To me they are silent. Oh, this is the enmity of light towards what gives light. Unpitying it travels its way, unjust toward the light giver in its innermost heart, cold towards suns, thus travels every sun. Like a storm, the suns fly along their courses. That is their traveling. They follow their inexorable will. That is their coldness. Oh, it is only you, obscure dark ones, who abstract warmth from light givers. Oh, only you drink milk and comfort from the udders of light. Ice is around me. My hand is burned with ice. Thirst is in me which yearns after your thirst. It is night, that I must be light and thirst for the things of night and solitude. It is night. Now my longing breaks from me like a wellspring. I long for speech. It is night. Now do all leaping fountains speak louder, and my soul too is a leaping fountain. It is night. Only now do all songs of lovers awaken, and my soul too is the song of a lover. On one occasion Zarathustra strictly defines his task. It is also mine, the meaning of which cannot be misunderstood. He is affirmative to the point of justifying, of redeeming even the entire past. I walk among men as among fragments of the future, of that future which I scan, and it is all my art and aim to compose into one, and bring together what is fragment and riddle and dreadful chance. And how could I endure to be a man if man were not also poet and reader of riddles, and the redeemer of chance, to redeem the past, and to transform every it was into an I wanted it thus? That alone would I call redemption.